I was going back and watching some of your old interviews before, and one of the ones that comes up always is kind of the first one you ever did, which was with Nick Broomfield and that Biggie and Tupac documentary, which was like 25 years ago.
Well, yeah, I really don't like talking about that one too much because I get kind of this is why I'm somewhat reluctant to even do these type of interviews. What happened, and believe it or not, it was the sheriff department that we had just transitioned over into from Compton PD, and they allowed me to go on camera, and matter of fact, took him, Broomfield, around in a sheriff's car to kind of see particular neighborhoods and stuff in Compton. But this young man, I don't know how young he was, but he led me to believe that he was only interested in the gang culture throughout the city and how it started the origin of the gangs and all that. But deep down inside, he didn't want to do anything but to talk about Suge Knight, mostly in Death Row, and wanted to see where Suge lived and all that, which Suge was raised in the neighborhood I lived in, and Reggie Jr. was raised in. But then, when I noticed he wasn't concerned about the gangs, he didn't want to hear when I started talking about going to Southside or Santana area, he didn't want to. He just, oh no, let's concentrate on this. So finally, I got a little suspicious of him. I took him straight to the police station, back to the police, and told him, get out of my car. You know.
How did he react to that?
He wasn't happy, that's for sure. And oh no, you know, he started trying to pop. But Nick Brumfield, he has me reluctant to do these things, but I do.
I do like that that documentary just as a historical artifact. I like the people that he talked to are interesting, but as far as like, you know, getting at the truth of what happened, I think it's nonsense.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We can skip Nick Brumfield.
What about Poochie? Wardell Fouse, you know, he's come up more because of Greg Kading, of course.
Okay, well, Wardell, I believe, was directly responsible for the Biggie shooting. I believe, based on street information I had and the capabilities of him and description, a whole lot of stuff, Poochie was the shooter.
Did you ever have any interactions with Poochie?
Yeah.
What were they over?
Over just burglary and being a dummy. Early before he got boy, I keep like I'm having trouble with that word. Notorious, notorious big, notorious. Before he was coming up, just proving himself in the hood to be down,
sure,
be a shooter, whatever. Cause he didn't act in no group. He wasn't claiming Poochie. He wasn't no Looters Pyru or this or that. He was Poochie. Yeah, but hey, that didn't play. But
so he had to pick a set eventually.
There you go. Well, you know,
suppose he was mob.
You're running around and crossing each other's hood, Looters. But Looters was always an older set. You know, mob derived off of Looters because they wanted to identify north of Rosecrans in their own little set growing up. But the OG Pyrus, you know, and all that, they were over there in Looters. You know,
right.
They wasn't from mob. Guys never really grew up from mob. The original Raw didn't grow up calling themselves Ludo Park Pyrus. They call themselves mob. Some Ludo Park OGs like Heron and stuff like that, they came over and started mingling with the mob until the younger mobs, as they grew, start having their little issues between looters, right. Like today prevalent. I understand all that, but that's why I'm glad my mother got out of that.
Right.
Family, I should say, because my mother.
So do you remember any specific interactions with Poochie?
Yeah.
Any specific stories? Tell me some stories.
I'm about to say, it was just one I got him for burglary one time. He wasn't but about 19 in or something. I arrested him for burglary, but I had a buddy last name Fouse from the project, Albert Fouse, that I grew up with. And I thought he was related to them when I first arrested him, and he said, I owe you that, but he swore they weren't related. And I didn't, but I concentrated on that name, and every time Poochie would come up, y'all talk about Fouse. And I know he was wanted for something. It wasn't a shooting. It was something, it could have been the birth. And I knew him. I went and got his butt. And I arrested him, and he ended up confessing to it.
The burglary or whatever it was?
It was a burglary, because it wasn't a shooting. It was because he didn't start shooting until a little later. And then that's when they started talking about Poochie was doing this. So I said that, but graduate, because he got out of jail and then started doing stuff.
He came out deadlier.
Yeah, and then started being up at death row and all that. Walt?
What was he like? What do you remember?
One thing about these kids, and I just had that rapport with them, and by me being from the neighborhood, they knew of me and all that. He didn't get no back talk. He didn't get no talk. He didn't intimidate me. I'm sure I didn't intimidate him. He just respected. Probably say, "I motherfucker, I wish I didn't know him." Or he probably sometimes wanted to take my butt out, but he just had too much respect because he was doing sneaky stuff all through Compton.
Like what?
Shootings and robberies. He was a hustler. He was a gangster. Have gun will travel.
Yeah. He was active.
Yeah, very much.
And did you ever hear about him doing jobs for other people, like doing enforcement or shootings for others?
That was the thing. He was a hitman. I don't want to say nobody in particular he did jobs for, but you know and I know. Mm-hmm. But it was obvious.
Right.
It was obvious.
Wow.
And I'm not like don't want to talk or do all that. It's just so much of that is behind me and long time, and they don't do me no good. Or they don't. I had guys who are grandfathers now and calling me about people talking about back in the day when they were this and that. Hey, can they let that go? I survived. Don't talk about that. I don't want my grandkids hearing my name, so I don't like saying people's names.
I think now because of murder rap, but also because of Keefe going public, and a lot of these people now have started going public too on YouTube and whatnot, and now it's becoming more mainstream. These names that used to only be known in Compton are now known all over the world, really.
A lot of these stories are international.
Right.
Yeah, I know. That's why Brumfield wanted to come from the UK.
That's right.
And that's why he kind of convinced me in the sheriff department. It was all about just talking about kind of introducing the gang culture to the kids out there in the UK to kind of try to get them, influence them to do differently. And man, he had a bit of intention about what was going on in Compton, other than Suge Knight and Death Row.
Right. And you get some outsider like that come in, doesn't know the story well, doesn't know the players well. He's easy for him to fall for a
whatever he's told.
Where he doesn't understand the background. Yeah, exactly. Whatever he's told. Right?
There you go. Yeah.